Hello there and welcome along to the fourth video update for the Atheist Prayer Experiment. We're currently on day 25 of the 40-day period in which we're asking some 70 atheists to pray each day for God to reveal himself to them. If you want to find out a little bit more about this slightly crazy idea we've had, then do go to the webpage at premier.org.uk/Atheist Prayer Experiment. I'm Justin Briley and I'll be looking back at some of the responses and questions that have been raised in a special programme, Unbelievable, on Premier Christian Radio towards the beginning of November. Well, what have our atheists been getting up to? What have they been saying? What have they been thinking? I asked some of the participants to give me their thoughts so far in 10 words or less on our Facebook group. Here's a few of their responses. Scarlett, same experience daily, no response from any God so far. Jessie, solitude and sympathy. Gregory, nothing's happened, never mind. Gordon, interesting experience, reintroduced me to meditating. Forum discussions are great. Paddy, what Gordon said. Oliver, started fun, getting boring. Emma, becoming more convinced that I'm an atheist. Chris, feel a bit stupid, praying. James, enjoying the peaceful contemplation, but better ways to achieve it exist. Well, as you can see, the majority of the feedback so far is simply no response, but some are at least finding it useful as a way of making space for meditation and thinking through things. I should say though that only a very small proportion of those who have committed to taking part are actually regularly posting on the Facebook group, and indeed many of the people simply haven't yet got back to me with their reflections on the experiment thus far, so we can't say that we've heard from everyone at this point in the experiment. Of course, we'll make sure we do that by the end of the experiment. Derek is sending me a very organised spreadsheet of his experiment, as you can see. He's telling me exactly what's going on. Nothing to report being the main entry. The problem for Derek is the problem of suffering, and he says that if there is a God, how can he allow so much suffering in the world? He would like an answer to that very specific question if he's going to believe in an all-loving, all-good, all-powerful God. Others have other things to say. Brian is asking himself why he's even bothering at the moment. I just realised how utterly petty this experiment is, he says, and how utterly petty this God may be. I found myself in prayer thinking about asking whatever the hell is up there to look after the kids in our country who get their only food from the school lunch programme, and how completely horrible that is. And then I thought, wait, I'm supposed to be praying for a revelation here. Petty. Well, I suppose that depends, Brian, on your point of view. Many would say that the fact that they believe in God is part of the reason they go out and help precisely those kinds of people. But Andrew says, I forgot to pray for the last 2 days. I asked for a bit of radio silence during the experiment. I've given up my weekly fix of Unbelievable, haven't searched for the Atheist Prayer Experiment, haven't even told my friend I'm taking part. On which note, I was asked if I ever prayed last night by someone. I didn't want to lie, but I stopped short of saying exactly what I prayed for. He also has a question about the philosophical paper on which the experiment is based. He said, it's one thing to ask a quiet old man to answer you in a darkened room, but God would be a quiet old man who loves you and wants to believe in him, so why wouldn't he answer the first time you called out? If you were sceptical, why would he make his answers so subtle as to not be heard? There are philosophical answers to these questions, but I'm going to defer to the authority of one of my Christian friends by claiming that philosophical questions end where they start. Well, the question of why God may remain silent is a live one for Christians, obviously. Assuming that many, perhaps even all the atheists, don't receive any answer in the course of this experiment, well, does that mean that God doesn't exist? Obviously, from a Christian perspective, we wouldn't draw that conclusion necessarily, and we might want to ask, well, why God might not be answering in the way that atheists are hoping or expecting him to. Perhaps God is not beholden to simply satisfying our intellectual curiosity, but is really interested in people desiring him in some way. Others suggest that perhaps God's hiddenness may be as much for our own good as anything. God is, after all, not a cosmic slot machine or something. But perhaps those are just the philosophical answers that Andrew is a bit wary of. Paul writes, I've decided to read a verse or two of the Bible, John's Gospel, when I pray. No developments of any kind that I'm aware of with regard to this experiment, not knowing exactly what I should expect anyway. In the past week, I attended a funeral of a relative. Very upsetting, as you might expect. I thought it might have an effect on the experiment. It doesn't seem to have done so, but I realise events such as this can be slow burning in their impact. That's all for now. Finally, Emma writes, it's my birthday and I'll pray if I want to. She says, I celebrated by having rather more wine than I'm used to, and having left prayer to the end of the day, I may have been a bit hectoring and abrupt with God last night. Is praying while a bit drunk wrong? If I cut the Mr. Nice Guy bits out and in a nutshell said, look, if you want a relationship with me, if you want me worshipping you, you'd better make it clear, because frankly, I'm getting pretty off with all this. So yes, praying while a bit tiddly is wrong. I was squaring up to God like a late night drunk on the streets. But then, if God sees all, there's no point in pretending I'm good all the time. Well, that's all for now. If you want to follow along yourself, then do follow the links from the Atheist Prayer Experiment webpage at premier.org.uk/atheist prayer experiment. Until next week, that's all for now.